and he is the IFLAC Word Poeta Mondial 2022. In 2021, he won an Emergent Seed grant, and his poem Freebird has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize. He hosts a poetry channel on YouTube and has published poetry books with Sarah Cahill Marin at Beltway Editions. Again, a reminder of his newest books, 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant and Origami, selected poems of Manuel, Ulacia. Would you please welcome our dear friend and friend to all that is poetry, Indran Amirdanayagam.
Oh, well, I was just saying thank you so much, Sandy and Kim. Thank you. You take my breath away, really, with such a generous introduction. But I do love poetry, and I love spreading the word, and I am honored that I shared the bill tonight this afternoon with Regina, and I'm just grateful that activists are multiplying and have been multiplying before me and before us, and we will continue to be working the street, the boardroom, the ocean, breaking down borders. I'm going to read principally from 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant, which was published by Larry Moore at Broadstone Books, and it's a book I'm very close to. I will read a poem, certainly from the translation of Origami, which is also obviously I'm very close to, and a very close friendship with Manuel Ulacia, a great Mexican poet whom I translated, who passed away in an accident many years ago. Anyway, 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant, I wrote in 2020, in the height of the pandemic, in the height of the campaign against the orange-haired tyrant in the United States. Lula from Brazil was just in Washington yesterday, Friday, and he was interviewed, and he said, he was asked why he's so old, according to the interviewer. He's 77, he said, but he said, I'm 77 years old, but I have the energy of a 30-year-old. And why do I have that energy? Because I have a cause, and I'm engaged. I have a cause for not to, in my country, he said, there are 35 million people who are suffering from hunger. That cannot be in a country that produces so many agricultural goods, so much riqueza. So, we poets also have our causes, and we are forever young as a result. And so another man who has a cause is Joe Biden, and the campaign against that fellow who I will not name directly, led to some of these poems. In love and poetry, call it now out loud, without shame, by its name. Call it this morning on waking in the still dark. Call it reading last night your words on the screen. Call it banishing sleep. There is no energy more sweet that sustains. Call it for the one who corrects these verses. Call it on streets of suburb and city, in the fields. Call it in front of the Capitol, on top of Mount Baldy, on Waikiki Beach, by Lake Superior. We're going far, my dear, and we're walking back home for Thanksgiving. Let us invite Kamla and Joe to the table. Let us boil sweet potatoes, serve elderberry jam, make a bean and onion stuffing. Let our friends know the meal will not involve killing a turkey or any other fowl. Let us give thanks, God, for this vitamin flowering in the early dark, guiding our fingers as we write, saying, call it now, in the day, at night, to friends and enemies alike. In love and poetry, we're going to make table and bed, and we're going to write our songs in these days of the plague, until we see light come up above the trees on fire, the befogged clouds, until the back of beyond. the right path. Let us roll, America. Let us not look back. Let us seize the fellow by the absent coat tail. Let us reveal the traipsing emperor nude, and let us remember and defend the rights of our virus dead. But let us do so with respect, with love. Why? Because Jesus says so. Why? Because we're not jackals and hyenas. Why? Because we have to get back on the road to the promised land. This is the cover of 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant. You'll see lots of flags there. My son Anandan designed the cover, and he has designed the cover of a number of my books, and I'm very grateful for this particular image of the steps that we take to heal and in the face of that tyrant. One of my heroes growing up was Allen Ginsberg, and so I wrote this poem that I included here called The Relevance of Allen Ginsberg. I have one more story to share about Allen Ginsberg. I was at Columbia studying journalism, stressed utterly, with no time for poetry, trying to get the nut graph right and learning to control my bladder to last through the news conference with the follow-up interview. Then I learned that Allen was to feature at a club downtown. Memories of Honolulu, of our first meeting when he sang Sweet Oahu in the club, in the car playing the harmonium. He told me then to cut half the first draft out. I could not resist seeing him again, so despite the heavy reporting load, I took the subway down the west side and walked east. He asked me if I would read in the open. I could not refuse, and I read my poem about the 241 Marines bombed in Beirut. And he told me he liked the tat-a-tat rhymes and story, but did not care for the doubting end. He said, you have to take a stance, then say it. I'm saying it now. Get rid of the dissembler, hoodlum, and pussy grabber. Get rid of the thou shalt not enter and the latrine supervisor. Get rid of the one who would be king. Get rid of the golden tamarind toupee. Get him out of the people's house. Then speak to me about the hummingbirds and next year's cherry blossoms. You know, I want you talked about the song. I mean, it is the song, isn't it? Deep song anthem. We need the deep song. We're going far and long to Pennsylvania Avenue and beyond. Vote, donate, be strong tonight, Kamala. You will make us proud on that debate stage, I know. And Joe is cooking just fine, and the people are gathering in the name of decent government and truth in speech and deed. We're going far and long. Now Texas is in play in a serious way. North Carolina and the Rust Belt are coming back to the fold. Michael Moore, I salute you. Congressman Lewis, in your name, and so many other brothers and sisters. Let us remember Jacob Blake in rehab. Keep him in prayers. Keep the families who've lost breadwinners, sons and daughters to the bullet, the plague. We will not forget you. My mother, yes, is suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and but on that vote, we went to the polling station, and this was just a couple of years ago now, and she's going strong and working. The song is called Voting Song. I'm going to take Mother to the polling station. This may be her last chance to vote for the right path from the burning bush, sinking ship, roadkill, victims of the raging virus. I'm going to take Mother to the polling station. And son, make sure you get that absentee ballot sent here while you visit. Every vote will count. And daughter, although you cannot vote, not this time, I want you to know that we have tried with all of our heart and mind to throw the bastards out. You know, the heroes come and the heroes go, but they come back, you know, but we have to carry the flame. Pencil. This was written after Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing. And I dedicate it to Sarah, my dear friend and partner in the in Beltway Editions, who is a poet and also a lawyer. And on that day, She went to the Supreme Court with her legal pencil and she left it on the steps. Pencil. There is a time to mourn and a time to review the cards and cast them again on the table, trusting God to guide your hand, to say this pencil you left with roses, chrysanthemums, lilies, in a riot of passionate flowers before the Supreme Court, will be picked up by a girl after the period of mourning, not to be conserved in the Smithsonian Museum of American History, but to write the story of a young lawyer come to Washington to interpret laws with grace, acuity, and impartiality to the best of her ability, until such time as their articulation becomes almost unnecessary, so ingrained they would become in the social conscience of Americans, walking then freely. I'll admit I like these poems. I thought when I was writing them, they might have a shelf life or something. But, democracy doesn't have a shelf life. Conserving it, preserving it, or trying to restore it, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or is it 1 step forward, 2 steps back? We got to keep getting back to that step forward. And there's so much to do. There's so much to do. Soul rising. I miss you something fierce. I have to tell my bones to stop shaking, to calm down, that there is something called work, poetry, cleaning the room, getting food together, attending to mother, reading fine print and polling, picking up the phone, cold calling a Texan in the name of participatory democracy, the nations and the earth's soul and the dream, jostling about in the coffin, thinking the time is now to break down the wood, pierce the earth, slide out to walk abroad again through these United States. There was the Gettysburg Address, right? We all know that from our history books. Then there was another Gettysburg Address recently before the election. This poem is called Address Beyond Gettysburg. We're not going to stop. We have already started to walk, to run, our legs stretching, striding. The wind is behind us, blowing our hair and pushing us ahead. Every day, every hour, every minute fills us with enormous adrenaline, enormous hope. There are only so many insults the brain and heart can take before they begin to fight back, but with guidance from the village elder to dilute the poison barb with herbs and prayers, to get the Russians on the back foot, to invite Chinese to return to business, to let ordinary Iranians drink coffee in peace. But I'm not a mere internationalist. No, my friends, I'm running with Iowa farmers, former steel workers of Bethlehem, chicken pickers of Purdue plants in Tennessee. I'm not satisfied with the way things are in 50 states and all the dependencies. In Puerto Rico, I will not ignore people after they suffer hurricanes twice. In New Orleans, in the bayou, I'm not going to stop at building a levee. I will build parishes back with the faith that sustains me and them, that we will see a promised land, that we can arrive there together, one nation under God, and I have only just begun. Just begun. Give me your stories from every community, every state house. We're going to talk among ourselves. One great family conversation around the fireplace, the TV, the radio, the computer, the phone. We're going to go back towards building that great society. Do you remember the dream deferred? Langston Hughes will be on my night table. Congressman Lewis will dance in my dreams as he did in Congress. Blue Dog Democrats will have their say at the table, and we will listen to reasonable arguments from the other aisle. What is reasonable? That we spend the budget to get people back to work in good health and with hope, that we make peace with our friends again, and we trust but verify our enemies. I'm not a mere idealist. Enemies are there, friends are there, poetry is there. Let's make poetry serve the larger purpose. I'm going to read now just one poem, but from Origami. Manuel Ulacia is a great poet from Mexico who was a close friend of mine when I lived in Mexico City in late 1999 to 2001. He was my closest friend, and he picked me up at the office. I was working in the US Embassy there, and he took me to lunch in the Zona Rosa. And then from there, we just met at his home in Coyoacan, and we just carried on, and we eventually ended up writing poems and sharing poems, and I started translating his poems into English, and this is the book that began back then over 20 years ago. Manuel, these poems were originally going to come out in 2001, but Manuel passed away. He drowned at sea, and it was a very, obviously, a terrible shock. We all went into hibernation. I don't know, the editor, the publisher was going to publish the book, sadly did that as well and did not publish the book. So the book became a sort of something that I carried around with me in my mind and in drawers, and eventually published some of the poems in India in a book called Fafnir's Heart. Thank you very much, Priya Sarukai Shabra, for that, and on her wonderful website as well. And then some of the poems appeared in Reversible Monuments, Copper Canyon's anthology of Mexican poetry. But now they're all here, at least all that I had worked on with him, and a couple of others that I worked on since his passing. I'll just read one poem from the book section, Arabian Nights. Manuel was a great traveler, and this is called Supper, this poem. I'll read the Spanish too, just for you to hear his music in the original. La Cena. Incendiados los azules en constante movimiento, chocan, pactan y se licuan. Todavía un sol naranja ilumina la terraza, el albero del camino, las copas de los cipreses, la ciudad en la hondonada, blanca marea de luces que crece mientras la noche hace más espeso el bosque. Alrededor de la mesa los amigos cenan, hablan, asisten a doble fiesta, la que ocurre allá en la bóveda celeste, coreografía en la que el día se fuga y la que el diálogo crea. Entre el silencio de dos palabras, un grillo canta, emanación de una estrella que a lo lejos centella. Otra luz brilla en los ojos de los que oyen y contemplan. Eco del eco del eco, la estrella, el canto y la llama. Se escribe solo el poema. Supper. The blues on fire, moving constantly, crash, agree, and liquefy. An orange sun still lights the terrace, the clay of the road, the cypress cups, the city below in a hollow valley. A white tide of lights that grows while the night thickens the wood. Around the table, friends eat and talk, attend a double feast, one that occurs up there in the firmament, celestial choreography in which the day flees, in which the dialogue creates. In the silence between two words, a cricket sings. The emanation of a star sparkles far away. Another light shines in the eyes of those who hear and contemplate. Echo of the echo of an echo. Star, song, and flame. Only the poem writes itself. Origami, Selected Poems of Manuel Ulacia, published by Bill Lavender, Dialogos books. Very grateful to you, Bill, and very grateful to you, Larry, for bringing these books into the world. Here is 10,000 Steps. I think if I have a minute, I might finish with one more poem from 10,000. The book, thank you, I've mentioned, was written, during the pandemic and during this campaign. And so there are a series of poems in the book more related to the pandemic. And also there are lots of mothers in the book, including my own mother, right? And there's also the mother of all battles, the mother of all elections. different ways of thinking about this word mother. And so I'll finish with this poem, which I'm very grateful to God for having given me this inspiration, and to the inspired. Late night olive oil. Let us put the letters and fears and boiling emotions on the page. Mummy, why did you go to the kitchen stealthily, without a word to your sleeping son, without your walker, to find the large bottle of olive oil, to pour it on the table and floor, to fill a small vessel which you meant to carry back to your room, as if nobody would notice until you called my name, because you could not negotiate the rest of the way from dining table to bedroom, vessel in hand, without cane or walker. I write to atone for my flailing words, saying never, never, never again. The kitchen is prohibited. Your mania for oil in the hair is prohibited. The stealthy, mischievous, childish, truant foray into the darkness with a torch in hand, which you forgot on the countertop, all of this is prohibited. Your losing memory and control are prohibited. These words are prohibited. Decline and death are prohibited. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow. That's Indran Amirvinayagam. The book is 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant, as well as